marks have been allocated. Okay, grade 12s, we are ready to start with today's section on human rights, inclusivity, and environmental issues. And we will be looking at the way that questions are asked and how the marks are allocated first. So to remind you, the marks are allocated in 3 ways. And the first way that they ask you is when you see the verbs in a question use give, identify, list, mention, name, and state, they are asking you to state a simple fact, and it's going to normally be a 1-word answer or 1 phrase that you're going to be giving, and 1 mark will be awarded. So take note and use this as part of your preparation for your examinations, for your prelims and your final examinations. When you see the verbs give, identify, list, mention, name, and state, you are only going to get 1 mark for that, so you don't need an in-depth explanation of it. It's normally going to be 1 word or phrase that is asked for there. Okay, the next way that the questions are asked and where the marks are allocated is where 2 marks are allocated, and they use the following verbs. So when they use the following verbs, 2 marks are allocated at the end of the statement. So again, you don't need an in-depth description of or in-depth explanation, but rather just a statement or phrase that they are looking for again. So when you see classify, name, suggest, advise, propose, define, outline, recommend, motivate, and state, then 2 marks are awarded for your entire statement. So you don't need to clarify everything or give in-depth explanations. Your 2 marks will be allocated at the end of the statement or the answer that you are given. So make sure again that you study these verbs so you know how to answer the questions, and it should also save you time when answering the questions as well. And then the final way that the marks are allocated for the questions is when you see these verbs. Now these verbs will require you to make a statement, and then you have to clarify the statement. So the marks will be split when you see these verbs. So when you see the verbs describe, explain, distinguish, discuss, analyze, elaborate, show impact, applying a technique, evaluate, differentiate, compare, tabulate, and justify, then you're going to have to make a statement, and you are also going to have to clarify that statement. So 1 mark will be awarded to you for making a statement, and a 2nd mark will be awarded to you for clarifying the statement. So grade 12s, as we go through your workbook now, and as we address the various questions that has been asked of you to answer in the workbook, I want you to take note of the verbs. The verbs have been underlined so you can see how or you are able to identify the verb and how the marks have been allocated. We will also remind you as we go along with regards to the verb that has been used and the way the marks have been allocated. So you can use this as part of your examination technique. So grade 12s, we are going to start now with answering the questions in your workbook. And the first few questions will be addressed by Mr. Van Sale, and he will start with the very first question that is in your workbook on page 19.
Right. Grade 12s, you would see that the first question is the following: recommend ways in which businesses could deal with the following human rights in the workplace. Now, guys, I just quickly want to step aside a bit from the question just to clarify the concept of a human right. A human right is an inalienable right that is given to a person just because he's a human being. In our Constitution, it is in the Bill of Rights, and there's a whole load of different human rights that are awarded to people. So in business studies, we are going to take those human rights and we are going to subclassify them into 3 different types of human rights or rights. We call them economic rights, social rights, and cultural rights. And you need to be able to identify those different rights and classify them according to those 3 different classifications as well. So make sure that you know which ones goes where. So right, I'm going to now stick to the next your first question, recommend ways. Now guys, the recommend basically means that you are going to make a statement and the marks will be awarded at the end of the statement. Recommend ways in which a business could deal with the following human rights in the workplace. Now we've got privacy, equity, freedom of speech and expression, information, and dignity. So right, if we go to the next slide, you can see there, the first one was privacy. It actually doesn't have too much explanation needed. Privacy basically means that we should not provide personal information about employees to anyone else. Basically, if an employee has in his file and there's some personal information there, like his bank account number, any illnesses or things that he might have, those are personal information, and that information should never be divulged to anybody else. That is a right that a person has, a human right that cannot be taken away from him. The right to privacy. The next one, information about employees who have disclosed their HIV/AIDS status. You should not read people's emails. Guys, all of these things has got to do with privacy. There's actually many more, and sometimes in a case study you will find that they've quoted some other form there that relates to privacy, and if they ask you to quote, that is the one that you need to put there.
I think it's important to know that when they ask you to recommend or suggest, there is no real textbook answer for the particular questions. There are things that we can prepare and learn, but it's also your recommendation or your suggestion. As long as it is valid to what the question is asking, you will be awarded those particular marks.
Yes. What Mr. de Klerk has said is absolutely true. You can actually veer off from these ones specifically. These are not the absolute answers. But I do want to caution you, though, that at the end of the year, there's a prepared memo, and that memo is going to be as exhaustive as what one can make it. They look at various different ways that this response could have been written. But sometimes people write outside of that memo, and it takes a while before that would be accepted as an answer. So you might be the first guy, and let's say on the Tuesday that got marked, and only on the Thursday they accepted your response as an answer, but yours have now actually gone through. So it is always better to prepare beforehand, because now this is exam techniques. It's no longer just about being creative and all of these things. It's exam techniques. It's always better to have something pre-prepared that you know came from a previous question paper, that you know there's no...
Yeah, that's what I was trying to lead towards. There are prepared answers, so your best route forward is to go with the prepared answers. But you must know that as a tactic or a technique, if you can't remember those answers, you are allowed to come up with your own, and it will, if it is a valid answer, it will most likely be accepted. But you should, as you said, go with the prepared answers as your first course of action.
I just want to, before we go to the next one, just reiterate that point as well. Many times, and I've seen it plenty of times in my own grade 12 business studies classes over the years, and I've also seen it at the end of the year, that very simple answers that I cannot believe that people wouldn't get, they could have guessed it, was never written because they couldn't remember the specific bullet point, and now I leave the question out completely. Never do that. Rather venture an answer somewhere on that memo, and those memos are quite long, and they add still more on as to the things that you guys see when you do old question papers. So always try to venture an answer. The possibility that there's something that I can link it to is always great. So never leave answers out. Right. The next one refers to equity. Now, guys, there's a very nice picture at the bottom, and I think you need to look at it carefully. Equity doesn't mean necessarily that we all get equal support or that we are all equal. We all need equal opportunity, and that is something completely different. Now, guys, if you look at the picture to the left of your screen, you will see there are three people there that have differing heights. And if you look at the guy right to the right, he's also got equal opportunity, or he is equal in the sense that he could have gone to the game, but he can't actually see. So equity then basically means we need to support that person. Some people don't need support in order to watch the game. So some people need more than others. So that is what equity means, is to help those that cannot see the game, so to speak, by giving them support. Right, so let's have a look at what the possible answers could be. Must give equal opportunities or not discriminate against employees on the basis of gender, race, religion, all of those things. You can think of the Employment Equity Act here, of course. Equal pay for work of equal value. Maybe there's something that you can go and research there if you need it for maybe the end of year, the originality marks in an essay. Go and Google the wage gap, and you will still see that even in today's time and place, we still do not pay females the same amount as men for the same work that they do, and that is just unfair. They should apply relevant legislation fairly on all levels and should ensure that no employee suffers because of discrimination. Right, I think we have covered this throughout the year in various topics, so it shouldn't be too difficult to understand.
Yeah, that is quite a very nice image that you have there. It clearly describes the difference between equality and equity.
That's
where
correct.
Equality is giving everybody the same,
Yes.
whereas equality is putting everyone on the same level.
On the
Because although we
same
might have
level.
the same resources and same opportunities, we might not have the same backgrounds. And our backgrounds might mean that we are not equal in that sense. So
Yes.
equality means getting us all on the same level so that we can then have an equal opportunity.
It's
So it's quite a
like-
nice picture in that sense.
Really, now you would understand the Employment Equity Act by giving preference to the designated
Yes.
group, because these were people that were left behind, and now because of that, they need more support in order to have the same opportunity, so to speak, to further their lives and livelihoods. So there you go. The next one, of course, is freedom of speech and expression. Should allow open communication channels between management and employees. You need to have a platform to raise your grievances. Now, guys, many times it has happened in businesses before. An employee differs widely with the management. He tries to express his view and now becomes victimized because he doesn't share the same opinion as his superiors. And now all of a sudden that person cannot get in line for getting job promotions and those type of things. Any business that does that is actually infringing on a person's right to freedom of expression. So businesses need to apply freedom of speech by not discriminating against anybody and giving people the platforms to actually express their opinions.
It's also an interesting fact with the freedom of speech that we do have the freedom of speech. We can say whatever we want, but it doesn't mean we should say whatever we want. Because oftentimes when we are expressing our emotions and saying what we want, in that action we can discriminate against somebody else. So there's
Yes.
always going to be consequences for our freedom of speech and our freedom of expression. So we should also be careful how far we use that right so that we don't discriminate against anyone else.
You are absolutely right. Maybe this is a good opportunity to talk about this. Human rights are not absolute. That means that it comes with responsibility as well.
Yeah.
Because as much as other people need to uphold my human rights, I need to do the same for other people. And that basically means the following. If I say things that are discriminatory towards other people, I am infringing on other people's human rights. If I say things that is derogatory towards different races or different genders than myself, then I am infringing on their right to dignity. So we have an obligation to uphold the rights of others as well. And so, and that said, hate speech and those type of things are in any case outlawed. It doesn't mean that it impedes on our right to freedom of expression, but that just means that what we say may not impede on the rights of others. Right. Next one is information. Now, this is the right to information. Workers should have access to information, including information held by the government. Of course, if there's any acts or legislation, that information needs to be given to the employees. You need to be transparent in their financial statements. Now, guys, why is this important? When it comes to wage negotiations, we need to know how the business is doing in general. And if a business is really doing well and they have grown over the year, I think it's only fair that workers also share in that progress. So therefore, on wage negotiations, before a worker just accepts any offer that you make them, they need to have input into your books to see if this is fair towards them. So therefore, they need to have access to that information as well. Employees should be informed, updated as new information becomes available. If there's changes in legislation or changes in working hours or whatever the case may be, they need to have access to that information. The next one is quite important, and that is dignity or respect. You must treat all employees with respect or dignity regardless of their socio-economic status. You should not force workers to do embarrassing or degrading work. Now, guys, this is a very it's not as simple as it sounds, because what is degrading for one person might be that person's livelihood, but if that's not in his normal type of work that they do, and you force a person to do things as a kind of a punishment, that can be infringing on a person's right to dignity. Right. The next question said, state the social rights. Now, once again, guys, the word state means I don't need to go into details. One word normally, or a very short phrase, is enough, and it will only be worth 1 mark. State the social rights. Now, remember, I've told you that there are human rights can be classified actually into 3 distinct rights. We are now only looking at ones that says specifically social rights. And recommend ways in which you could promote these social rights, not just uphold them, but actually promote them. Now, the first one is freedom of association. Guys, freedom of association basically means I am free to associate with whatever legal organization or people that I so want to, I can associate with them. And the law that comes to mind here that specifically gives credence to this is the the Labor Relations Act, which basically states I am free to join a trade union of my choice. Right, so that is the first one, freedom of association. Allow employees to join a trade union of their choice. Not doing so is, of course, illegal. Right to basic education. Now, guys, it says allow employees to attend training sessions provided by the different SETAs, that is to promote them or make them employable or promotable in the business. Guys, basic education is actually not further education and training. Although a person has a right to basic education, it basically refers to schooling. Right to health care. Provide medical aid benefits to employees. This is just how to promote them. I think there's no legal obligation on businesses to actually do this. It's no legal obligation, but this is a way to promote it and being nice to your employees. The right to health. I also know that certain businesses have sisters, nurses,
yes,
on duty that can attend to the different
I think the logic
employees.
it's if a business can afford to do it, should
If
be
they can
good,
afford to do it,
because you're also ensuring that your employees are staying healthy for longer, which means they are not going to be off work or be easily contracting illnesses or disease, which means they're going to be more productive. And when they're more productive, of course, you're going to be more profitable as a business. So
yes,
it might initially be an expense providing that option to your employees, but I think the reward is going to outweigh the expense in the long run.
You are right.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one is right to security. Ensure that all employees receive all the necessary protective clothing and equipment and all of those things. Basically, it's all of their private possessions that they bring to work, that there's a safe space for them that you can provide them with so that their stuff is not stolen. Right, so that is basically all your social rights. The next one says state the cultural rights. Now, guys, cultural rights refer to things like language, religion, those type of things. Okay, state the cultural rights of employees in the workplace and recommend ways in which you could promote these cultural rights in the workplace. Now, guys, be very careful when you get a question like this. There is actually 2 questions in one, and I've seen it many times with some of my grade 12s. They write, state the cultural rights of employees in the workplace, and they start answering and they're stating all of this, but they never read the last part of the sentence, which says recommend ways in which you could promote these cultural rights. So let's just have a look. Use of language of your choice. Encourage employees to communicate in the language they feel most comfortable in, if everybody can understand that language. Participate in cultural events. You guys can read through this. Just in terms when it comes to language of their choice. Guys, sometimes it is just impractical for a business to have all 11 languages in the country to be represented in all the correspondence. And in most cases, those correspondence are then in English because it's the world language, right? So basically what then happens is, if you communicate with a worker, you can have translators available that can translate information to them in their own language. But the most important one is never discriminate against people using the language of their choice in their free time. Okay, so with other words, if it's a break time or they're speaking in the hallways and things like that, you cannot prevent them from using their own language.
Yeah, I think it's nice to clarify with that one that a business will have the primary language that they communicate in.
Yes, the language of instruction,
yes,
the language of communication.
Correct. So all documentation, all information will be handed out in that language, but that doesn't, or it shouldn't stop people then if communicating with each other in a language that they feel comfortable with, because obviously a lot gets lost in translation.
Yes, that's
so
correct.
If I am speaking a particular language and you speak a particular language, when I'm talking to you, I can give my instruction to you in the language that we are most comfortable in.
Yes.
Because then the information is going to be transferred more accurately. Whereas if I have to translate or transpose information, then a lot can get lost in that, and then we might not actually end up reaching our goal.
And you know where it's actually more so than anything else is in disciplinary action against employees. Then if there's a disciplinary hearing, that employee has the right to a translator, okay, because this is things that affect his future. And he should be able to communicate in the language that he can express himself in more clearly.
And of course, when you are dealing with contracts with customers, because if there's something that the customer doesn't understand, and according to the rights that the customers have, they have the right to have the contract in the language of their choice.
Absolutely.
Because again, if they don't understand something there, it's our duty as the business to inform the customer. And if we don't do that in the language of their choice, there's also repercussions for us.
That's correct.
So there's rights for the customers and the employees. So there's lots of rights that the learners need to understand.
Yes.
But the language, it's just we should just appreciate and encourage people to be able to speak in the language of their choice.
That's correct. Yeah. The next one, of course, participate in religious practices. Guys, these could be things like allowing Muslim women to wear the hijab. To discriminate against them for doing that is actually illegal in this country. Religious holidays, they need to be able to participate in those cultural activities. So these are all relevant facts that would be accepted at the end of the year, and that recommendation gets a double mark at the end. Right, and then question 4. And now we get to the split marks, and I want you to pay particular attention here because there's a statement and a qualifier attached here. Explain the implications of equality, respect, and dignity on the business. The first bullet point says businesses should treat all their employees equally. Okay, now what does it mean to treat an employee equally? That is because it's regardless of their race, their age, their gender or sexual orientation, disability, and all of those. That's your qualifier. All workers should have access to equal opportunities, positions, and resources. That is what we mean by equal opportunities. Employers and employees need to comply with legislation. What legislation? With regard to equal opportunities or human rights in the workplace. Now, guys, you need to be guided here by the mark allocation. Don't write too much, because then you might run out of time. And write in bullet point form exactly as you see it there, because then you can exactly see how much you have written and there's nothing that you have left out. Okay, if it's an 8-mark question, 4 of those bullet points are sufficient, and I would actually never really worry too much more about 4 bullet points. I think is good enough for 150 mark.
Yeah, so you normally take the mark allocation divided by 2, and that's an indication as to how many statements you have to make. And then obviously for each statement you have to have a clarifier, which means you're going to clarify or qualify to qualify the statement.
That is correct. Okay. Right, the next one I'm going to leave to my good colleague, Mr. de Klerk, and he's going to take you through the next questions.
Right, so question 5 reads as follows. Recommend or suggest ways in which the business could deal with the following diversity issues. Now again, here, grade 12s, the verb that has been used here is recommend or suggest. So just like in the first question that Mr. Van Zyl explained to us, the mark allocation here is, or the marks are going to be allocated at the end of your statement. So you just need to make a statement. You don't need to clarify the statement, and the marks will be added or awarded to you at the end of the statement. So each statement you make will get 2 marks. And they want us to recommend or suggest ways in which a business could deal with the following diversity issues: poverty, race, gender, language, age, cultural religion, as well as disability. Now, grade 12s, it's important to remember here, as Mr. Van Zyl said, look at the mark allocation. It's unlikely that they're going to ask you for all of these in the exam. Sometimes in section B, they might ask for 1 or 2 of these diversity issues that need to be addressed, or if it's an essay, they might ask for a few more, but let the mark allocation guide you again. So if it's 8 marks, like we said earlier, just divide the 8 marks by 2, and that's going to tell you how many statements you need under each of the diversity issues. So use the mark allocation, and as a rule of thumb, you should know at least 2 or 3 points under each of these, so that if they do ask it in an essay question, then you will be rewarded, because you might need to mention a few more things in an essay question. Okay, so let's have a look at the first aspect, which is
Mr.
poverty.
Clerk, sorry, I just want to maybe reiterate here, in a question like this where it says recommend or suggest is specifically for those. In most cases, what they do is they will tell you, recommend, suggest ways that you could deal with the following, and they will give you poverty and they will give you gender. And under each of those is normally a 4-mark answer. So with other words, guys, to really go and study 4 bullet points here, I think is going to be futile. 3 at the most should be enough.
Yeah. 2 or 3, no more than that. Otherwise, you're going to end up with too much, especially with the new format of the exam paper. I don't think they're going to no longer going to ask those 12-mark questions or those 10-mark questions, because they don't have those marks to play with. So grade 12's 2 or 3 points under each is more than sufficient. Okay, so looking at the first aspect there, we have poverty. And remember, this is just recommendations, but these are what we are suggesting to you to learn, so that you are assured of your marks should these questions appear in your final examination papers. Okay, so the business should employ people from different socioeconomic backgrounds. And what's important about that is because you should, as a business, also be aiming to alleviate poverty in the country. And therefore, if you're going to employ people who are living in poverty, then you are also going to be part of the solution for poverty. So that's why we say we should, as a business, employ people from different socioeconomic issues, so that we can also benefit the economy in that way. If we only employ people who are part of the affluent community and who are not living in poverty, then we are not actually going to be solving one of the biggest issues in our country. So we should, as a business, be employing people from different socioeconomic backgrounds. Then another suggestion there would be train all employers so that they will be able to deal with issues like retrenchment, reward employees for services well rendered, ensure that prices of products are affordable for the identified community or consumer market. So those are ways that the business can help alleviate poverty in our society.
Mr. Clark, don't you think that a business being a profit-driven organization that employs many people are in any case in the process of alleviating poverty? Because to give people an opportunity to work and then better their skills through skills training will necessarily have an effect of uplifting people out of poverty.
Correct, because the more people are employed, the more incomes they earn, they're going to be spending money, and that money will be flowing throughout the economy. So by default, by employing people, yes, you are also alleviating poverty. But I think what a lot of businesses are trying to do at the moment as well, if they're in a position to do so, is to identify areas where there are lots of poverty and also try and upskill those people so that they can now apply for jobs where they previously never had the skills for. So that could form part of their CSI projects, the corporate social investment projects, as a way to give back and to the communities that are actually supporting them and making them profitable.
Mr. de Klerk, also just a word of caution to the grade 12s here. Avoid answers here, because you would see the last one says ensure that the price of products are affordable. Avoid writing lower prices or make it cheap. that is not necessarily
A correct answer, yes.
answer. So if you say to keep prices affordable, that is a completely different kettle of fish than making things cheap or just lowering prices, because a business is still in it for the profit.
Correct.
No business will supply people that cannot have the money to pay for it. But you need to keep your prices reasonable, I think would also be a nice
way of stating that, yeah. Okay, then the next aspect there is race. So we need to ensure that we are implementing the affirmative action policies as required by law. We need to make sure that there's no discrimination made on the basis of skin color, race, religion, and so on. We need to also ensure that we comply with the Employment Equity Act as well as the Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act when we are appointing people. And we need to ensure that the workplace is diverse by employing people from different race groups. Now, you will often see grade 12s especially in the government institutions, and a lot of companies are also following this rule of thumb. They try to look at the demographics of the country, and they try to ensure that the demographics of the country are also represented in the workplace, because that's also part of the broad-based Black Economic Empowerment as well as the Employment Equity Act, trying to ensure that the company is representative of the demographics that exist in the country. Because obviously, with our history, we need to ensure that we are also uplifting everybody to ensure that the demographics of the country is represented in our workplace. Okay, so those are the suggestions there, and again, the 2 marks awarded at the end of the statement. Okay, then grade 12s, we have gender, where we can recommend that businesses or the directors of the business should promote both men and women in managerial positions. Women should be employed to comply with the Employment Equity Act. There should perhaps be targets set in the business to make sure that there is gender equity or gender equality in the business. And we could also introduce affirmative action plans to ensure that male and female, or both male and females, are remunerated and treated fairly in the workplace. And this is what Mr. Van Zyl alluded to earlier, that even though we have moved forward in terms of gender equality, it is still, well, we are still sure in the workplace that in some cases men are still being paid more than women, and they're doing the same job. They've got the same qualifications, the same experience, but just based on the history that men have always been paid more than women, it's still happening. This is why we have the act like the Employment Equity Act, to try and ensure that women and men are paid equally if they're doing the same job and if they have the same experience and qualifications and so on, because it's not fair to pay somebody differently if they're doing the same job.
Yeah, and it's a very, very important point there. I think many people tend to think that we are discriminating against people if one person is paid more than the other. But remember, you pay a person based on the amount of responsibility that they take. So you need to qualify that the same work for the same pay.
Yeah.
Okay, if it's exactly the same, then you need to pay them the same as well.
Right, then the recommendation with regards to language, we could provide training to our staff in the official language of the business, and that's what we spoke about a little bit earlier. We could employ an interpreter if there is a person that doesn't understand that particular language, so that they can fully understand what is being said in a meeting. And that's where Mr. Van Zyl spoke about it earlier, especially with regards to disciplinary action, where often people are communicated to in a language that's not their first language, might not be their second language, and they misinterpret the information. So in instances where people don't understand the language, they have the right to have an interpreter present to make sure that they understand everything that has been discussed in that meeting. Then all business contracts should be easy to understand and in a language, and the language should be available in the language of choice for the relevant parties signing those contracts. And then no worker should feel excluded in meetings or that are conducted on the basis of one language only. So we should have a language that the business communicates in to ensure that everybody understands that information that is being transferred over there. Okay, then we have age, where we could say that perhaps people are being promoted based on their age. So often in the workplace, you'll find that someone who has been working there for longer automatically gets the job. And that's not necessarily the right way to go, because just because I've been working for a place for a long time doesn't mean I'm the best person for the job. So that's why we're saying that people should be promoted on the basis of what their skill set is, based on what their qualifications are, and whether they are actually the appropriate person for the job, rather than employing somebody that is a particular age or someone that has been there for longer. Or in some cases, they employ people because they are younger and they're going to be employed for longer. So we shouldn't be discriminating on the basis of age, but when we are employing people, we should be employing people based on the basis of their skill set, their qualifications, and their ability to do the actual job.
Mr. de Klerk, maybe also for originality points, should this question be an essay question, you can go and research the inequalities that are suffered by the youth. The unemployment amongst the youth is the highest of any other age group in the country. Because young people find it very, very difficult to find employment. They normally are not people that have experience, and because of the fact that they don't have experience, they cannot get a particular job. But that basically means they will never get experience if you don't hire them. So it would always be to your advantage to give these people, the youth especially, a foothold in the door to better their skills.
I think what a lot of companies do well, they have internship programs where they invite recently qualified people to apply for those positions, and then they learn the business, and the business also gets to see how that person grows, and that might be a foot into the business further. So a lot of bigger companies have the internship programs where they're looking for young, fresh graduates that they can actually mold and train, because in the long run, if you can train those people, they will also benefit the business in the long run. Okay, so that could be another strategy that the bigger business that can afford to do that, they often do that as well. Okay, the next recommendation you can make there is a business may not employ children younger than the age of 15, because obviously according to our South African Schools Act and the law of the country, the children should be in school up until the age of 16 or up until they finish their grade 9 so that they can receive their basic education. So you should not be employing people younger than the ages of 15 or 16. Okay, and then the ages of permanent workers should vary between the ages of 18 and 65 to include all age groups, because obviously different age groups come with different experience and qualifications, so they will benefit the business differently. So you should be looking to have people of different ages in your business as well to ensure you're not discriminating against anyone on the basis of their age. Right, then we have culture and religion. And again here, businesses must be sensitive to the special requests from different cultural groups. Example, allow days for different cultural festivals or events and so on. Even if it takes place during working hours, the business should acknowledge that religion, or they should acknowledge that culture and allow the people time off work to attend those festivals and practice their cultural or religious beliefs. Then the business could also cater for special food preparation when you have events in your workplace, or if you have a canteen in the workplace, make sure that you have food that's maybe halal, or food that's vegan, or food that's vegetarian, or all the different needs that are in your business. Make sure you're catering for everybody, so that everybody has equal opportunity to enjoy in the food that's maybe at the event or maybe in your canteen. And then lastly there, the business must not force any employee to do work that could be against their religion or their culture. So the business needs to acknowledge that there are certain things that are not allowed in certain religions or certain cultures and take that into account. An example I can remember there, Mr. Van Zyl, is Hashim Amla, the South African cricketer. So he is of the Muslim faith, and obviously according to the Muslim faith, they don't want to promote alcohol or alcoholic beverages, and South Africa at that stage was sponsored by Castle. And when he wore his cricket outfit, they actually took the Castle Lager badge off his uniform as a sign of respect and acknowledging that according to your religion or faith, that's not something that you're going to promote. So therefore, we're not going to force you to have it, even though it's branding and it's part of the promotion and they're getting money for wearing that badge on their kit. I think it's very important that we acknowledge that South African Cricket said, we're going to acknowledge your religion and culture and we're going to take that off your kit. Everyone else can wear it, but because that's your faith and your belief, we're going to respect that, and we're going to make sure we're not discriminating against you in that way.
I think also a practical thing, and you get it in workplaces all the time. Let's say it's a nice social atmosphere and everybody decides, listen, we are going to make Friday afternoons, we're going to stop early and then we're going to have a braai, and maybe it actually excludes a load of people, because if there's anything prepared on the utensils that you use, fork or whatever, that immediately excludes Muslim people from actually enjoying the
food,
festivities
yeah.
as well,
Or
if
people,
there's alcohol involved,
or the people practicing their religions that day, then they also exclude. So we need to be aware of those things as well. So we're not discriminating. We rather want to be inclusive, not exclusive.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, then grade 12, the last one we're looking at there is disability. And here the business should provide employment opportunities for people who are physically challenged. We could accommodate people who are physically challenged. For example, we could have ramps for wheelchairs or lifts that make it a bit easier for people to access their workplaces who might be in wheelchairs or be using crutches. We could ensure that the workers with special needs are not marginalized or feel excluded from the workplace activities, because we must remember, grade 12, that people who have difficult, sometimes disabilities or physical challenges doesn't mean they're incompetent or can't do jobs. It just means that the workplace needs to put something in place that makes it a little bit easier for them to do so. So we need to also acknowledge that we need to put things in place like ramps or make things a bit easier for those who might be physically challenged, because just because I might not be able to use a certain limb doesn't mean I'm incompetent or can't do a particular job.
Exactly.
So we don't want to take away that person's dignity as well, because by saying that you can't perhaps use your legs, you don't have no use of your legs, you can't work for me, takes away from that person's dignity as well. And then we're infringing on the human rights in terms of taking away their dignity as well. So we need to promote treating everybody equally and making sure putting measures in place.
I'm just thinking of something practical. So I was really thinking about it now. I was not prepared beforehand. Myself as a teacher, use my voice. What if I can't speak for some or other reason? I've contracted a cancer that caused me to lose my voice. How can you accommodate that person? Because I cannot do the work that I'm currently qualified to do. But can you use me in a different capacity? Maybe
I could
research or...
I could maybe use to set tasks, mark examinations, because you're still a qualified teacher.
Still a qualified teacher.
So you can set tasks or assignments, you can mark tasks or assignments. There might be a computer technology where you can type something in and the computer will read it out for you. So there might be certain ways that we can still assist you, because you're still competent, you're still qualified to do the job. You just have one thing that's taken away from you.
Yeah.
So we need to be inclusive of everybody, including people with various disabilities. Okay, then we have the next question where we have to discuss the benefits of diversity in the workplace. And again, grade 12 here, the key verb here is discuss. So we need to have a statement, and then we're going to have to qualify that statement as well. And you can see the marks have been split. So make sure you understand why the marks have been split. So we're going to make the statement for the first mark, and then we're going to qualify the statement. And again, this is something that you can study, because there are obviously lots of benefits that diversity can have in the workplace. So diversity in the workplace improves morale and motivation. So we're saying that you get your first mark for saying that diversity will improve the morale of the staff, and then the second mark for saying that diversity will improve the motivation of the staff. Then employees demonstrate greater loyalty to the business. Why do they demonstrate greater loyalty to the business? Because they feel respected, accepted, understood. They feel like they are part of the business and that they're adding value to the business. Then a diversified workforce can give a business a competitive edge. How? Because they can render a better service or a better qualified service or better quality service. Because when you have diverse people working for you, you must remember you're also going to have diverse customers.
That's correct.
So because you have different people with different backgrounds, they're going to perhaps have a better understanding of the customers that are coming into your store. So then you can allocate people to, I wouldn't say allocate people, but you will be able to better understand your customer, know where they're coming from, you know their background, and you can communicate better with them, perhaps in the language of their choice, and your chances then of making the sale is going to be improving. So by having a diverse workforce, you are able to also work with your diverse customer base and improve your profitability in the business in that sense. Okay, then the next point there is being respectful of different or of differences or demonstrating diversity makes good business sense. And as I just said, why does it make good business sense? Because it can improve your profitability. And we've just explained how the profitability can be improved there. And the last point is a diverse business or diverse businesses ensure that policies or practices empower every employee to perform at their full potential. Because we want to make sure that with our diverse workforce, they come from different backgrounds, they are not equal. Remember, we spoke about equality and equity. So we need to make sure we also address the equity aspect there, because we come from different backgrounds. We're starting at different points, so that we need to bring the equity in there to make sure we get to the same level. So in the workplace, we need to make sure that we are going to allow or ensure that our policies are empowering everybody and giving everybody the same opportunity and getting everybody to the same level. So we've got equity and equality, so making sure that everything is fair in terms of that in the workplace. Okay. Then question 7, grade 12, says recommend or suggest. Again, we've had a few of these questions now, so you should be able to just read through these and understand how the marks have been allocated here. But here we're saying recommend or suggest strategies that businesses may use to protect the environment and the human health. And these are the recommendations that we have in our core notes. We can say we can become involved in environmental awareness programs. Of course, there we are looking to protect the environment. We can provide water or ensure water for consumption should be tested before it is used. That could be in the workplace there, and there we are looking after the environment as well as the human health. We can promote nature conservation by looking at after our natural resources that we have, and that's protecting the environment. We can reduce the consumption of goods and services which are harmful for the environment, so that is again protecting the environment. The machines that we use must be serviced and maintained regularly, and that's going to protect the health of our employees as well as the environment because of the negative gases and things that come from the machines. And we can encourage employees to do regular health checks as well. So here, remember the questions asking about protecting the environment as well as the human health. So you can address either of those when you're answering this particular question. You can either just address the environment or just the human health, unless the question is specifically saying provide 1 or 2 facts for the environment or how we can protect the environment, and 1 or 2 facts or recommendations as to how we can protect the human health as well.
Yeah. Mr. de Klerk, maybe it's very important to note here, mostly, and I'm not saying it is necessarily so, but mostly these questions follow up on a case study that was given. Yeah. So you need to let the case study guide you on how you're going to answer the questions. Sometimes those answers that is acceptable is on no memo whatsoever, because it is related specifically to the context of the case study. So never veer off the context of the case study. If it's a case study, you need to stick into that context. If they speak about discarding old fish oil or whatever, you need to speak about how they should
discard the old fish oil.
Exactly.
There you go, grade 12. So if it's part of a case study, then let the case study guide you, let the theme of the case study guide you so that you can address that particular question. Because if it's part of a case study, they're often asking you for recommendations or strategies relating to the issue that has been addressed in the case study. If this is a standalone question, which is usually not, then these answers will be acceptable there. Okay, then the last question we have to address from your workbook, it says outline, explain, or discuss. So when you see any of those verbs, again, we need to have a statement, and then we need to qualify that statement there. So outline, explain, or discuss the roles of health and safety representatives in protecting the workplace environments. So let's have a look at some of our explanations here. We should ensure that protective clothing is provided and is available to all workers. So the first mark for saying it is provided, and the second mark saying it is available for all workers. For the second bullet point, we can identify potential dangers. Where are these potential dangers? In the workplace, because the question said we're talking about the workplace environment. Then initiate or promote or maintain or review measures to ensure that the health and safety of workers are adhered to. So we need to review or initiate or promote the measures, that's your 1 mark, to ensure the safety of the workers, 2nd mark. Ensure that all the equipment that is necessary to perform the work is provided and maintained regularly. Promote safe training. Why? So that employees may avoid potential dangers or you need to also be proactive. When we say be proactive, you need to see, are there potential dangers that may occur, and we can address them before they become an issue. So remember, when it comes to workplace, the environment and the workplace safety, you can either be proactive or you can be reactive. When you are proactive, it means you are looking ahead before incidents may occur. You're looking for all potential dangers, and then you are putting safety measures in place to ensure that those potential dangers don't occur. When you are reactive, it means you are addressing something after something has taken place. So you are reacting to a potential danger, and you then are going to address that danger to see why it occurred, who was responsible, and how can we prevent it from occurring in the future again. Okay, then we go back to the slide. We can see that we can, the last point there is ensure that dangerous equipment that is used in the workplace is used under the supervision of trained and qualified workers. So it's important there to make sure that you have, if you are using dangerous equipment, it needs to be used under the supervision of trained people to ensure that people are not harmed. And if you're not trained, you should not be allowed to use that equipment. So if you often see in the workplace, if there is equipment that is difficult to use or dangerous, people will have a training program to be shown how to use that equipment, and then they will be allowed to use under the supervision of somebody. And then once they are completely competent, they may then be left to their own device, but only once they are competent there. So those are the different ways we can ensure that people are protected in the workplace, and the workplace environment is safe. Because again, the last thing we want in the workplace is for people to get injured, because that's going to mean that they're going to be harmed. They might lose their job if they are temporarily or permanently disabled. In that case, the workplace might lose a valued employee, and it's going to have lots of negative repercussions. So we should protect the workplace environment before any dangers happen.
Mr. de Klerk, can you just quickly go back for me to the previous slide? I think there's something really important here that we need to remember, and I want you to make a note if you can. No, not the human one, the one after that. Okay, that health and safety representative. Now, guys, a health and safety representative is a person that is not appointed by necessarily management. It's an elected person that looks after the safety in the workplace. Now, guys, the first mistake that people make at the end of the year is they write there, instead of ensure that protective clothing is provided, they say he should provide protective clothing. Guys, this guy is just an employee. He does not provide anything.
The business provides.
And you will see that all of these words is ensure that protective clothing. So with other words, I'm going to petition management to say, listen, we don't have hard hats and we don't have this. This is what his work is. He doesn't provide it. Identify potential dangers. It doesn't say that he's going to fix it. He identifies. Initiate, promote, maintain, review. All of those things are passive verbs in the sense he doesn't actively do this. He informs. His job is to be between the safe environment and the liaison with management. Management and the business provides. He doesn't provide.
Yeah.
And it's very, very important, guys, because if you are going to say there that he provides protective clothing, you will not get the mark.
It's wrong, yeah. So he just ensures that everything is in place, but the business provides everything.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay, grade 12s, we have some consolidation activities over here. And we're just going to skim through these quickly because there's no need to answer everything. We've actually addressed all of these questions in what we've looked at today. What we just need to look at is how to answer these questions. So by looking at this first activity, it says that Neo Trading Enterprises, NTE, the management of Neo Trading Enterprises has promoted Mr. Tom, a senior manager, even though Mrs. Jane is more qualified than him. Some employees are not allowed to observe their religious practices, and NTE prefers young employees to come up with new ideas than old employees. Now look at the way the question has been asked. It says 2.1.1, identify 3 diversity issues referred to in the scenario above and quote from the scenario to support your answer. So grade 12's here, there are 2 parts to this question. The first part of the question is identify 3 diversity issues. That's the first part of the question. And the second thing that you have to do is quote a scenario to support your answer. Okay, and you'll see it's worth 9 marks, and I'll explain how those 9 marks are allocated to you now. Okay, so then the second part, 2.1.2, advise the management of entity on ways that they can deal with each of the diversity issues. And then at the bottom there it says, use the table below to present your answer. So when they say use the table below, you actually have to redraw this table in your book, because this table will actually have the answers for question 2.1.1 and 2.1.2. So you'll see there 2.1.1, the diversity issues. That column is the first part of the question where you're identifying 3 diversity issues. The quote is the second part of 2.1.1, and 2.1.2 is the recommendation. So all those marks will be allocated in this table here. And if you look at the answers quickly, you'll see there the diversity issues: gender, religion, culture, age, and then you will see the quotes that I've taken from the text. You'll see I've taken the entire sentence. So whenever they ask for the quote, just take the entire sentence, because somewhere in that sentence the answer will be there. And then the recommendation will be as we have recommended or suggested previously in this broadcast. So everything we've mentioned previously is also relevant there.
Mr. de Klerk, maybe it's important to note in a question like this, if you have identified the diversity issue wrong, they will also not mark the quote.
Yes.
Okay, and therefore the recommendation would also be wrong. Okay, so this is one of those things. It's a kind of a follow-on thing. So if you mess something up here, it can actually cost you a load of marks. They will not necessarily mark the diversity issue wrong if you've got the quote wrong, but no, they will, because the two
they all need to link. Yes,
it needs
so
to link.
that's one question where you need to concentrate. Make sure you have the diversity issue that's linked to the correct quote. And then the recommendation needs to be the correct recommendation for that diversity issue. Okay, grade 12s, that's all we have time for today. It's been nice to be back, and I hope you are enjoying being back at school, and that you have had a nice little short break for a week, and that you are ready to tackle this last part of the year, because we have not got long to go before you're into your prelims, and then straight after your prelims you're into your finals. So this is the last push, the last effort that you have to put in to ensure that you get the best results. Mr. Van Zyl, do you have a final word for the grade 12s?
I have a final word, guys. It's all up to you now. Not long to go. If you work logically and you work hard, there's nothing to fear. I think you are well equipped to go and do the best that you can.
Yeah, grade 12s, put the effort in, and the results will be beneficial to you in the end. Thank you very much for tuning in, and have a wonderful day further. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.